Pilgrim's Progress, Chapter 12. I slept again, and I dreamed I saw the same two pilgrims going down the mountains, along the highway toward the celestial city. Now a little below these mountains on the left-hand side lies the country of Conceit. From this country, meandering a twisting but pleasant green lane that joined the pilgrim's highway. It was here that Christian and Hopeful met a very brisk lad who was coming out of that country. His name was Ignorance. Christian asked him where he came from and where he was going. "Sir, I was born in the country that lies off to the left, and I am going to the celestial city." Christian asked, "But how do you think you will enter in at the celestial gate? I think you may find some difficulty there." "As other good people do," said he. Christian asked again, "But what have you to show at the gate that will cause it to be opened to you?" "I know my Lord's will, and I have lived a good life," Ignorance said confidently. "I pay every man what I owe him. I pray and fast. I pay tithes and give alms. And I have left my country to go to the celestial city." But Christian challenged, "But you did not enter at the narrow sheep gate at the beginning of the way. Instead, you have come into the way through a crooked lane. Therefore, I am afraid that whatever you think of yourself, you will be accused of being a thief and a robber on the day of reckoning, gaining no admittance to the celestial city." "Gentlemen, you are complete strangers to me. I do not know you," Ignorance stated. "Be content to follow the religion of your country, and I will follow the religion of mine. I hope that all will be well. And as for the narrow sheep gate that you talk of, the entire world knows that it is far away from our country. I cannot imagine that anyone in these parts even knows how to find it, nor do they need to bother, since, as you can see, we have a fine, pleasant, green lane that comes down from our country and joins the way directly." When Christian saw that the man was wise in his own conceit, he said to Hopeful, whisperingly, "There is more hope for a fool than for him." And he also said, "When he that is a fool walketh by the way, his wisdom faileth him, and he saith to every one that he is a fool." "What do you think?" continued Christian. "Shall we continue walking with him, or shall we walk away from him and give him time to think about what we have told him? We could stop and wait for him later and see if by degrees we are doing him any good." Then said Hopeful, "Let Ignorance a little while now muse on what is said, and let him not refuse good counsel to embrace, lest he remain still ignorant of what's the chiefest gain. God saith, those that no understanding have, although he made them he will not save." He further added, "I do not think it is a good idea to tell him everything at once. Let's pass him by for now, and if you would like, we will talk to him later. Perhaps he will be able better to consider what we've told him, if he's given some time to do so." So Christian and Hopeful both went on ahead, and Ignorance remained behind them. After a little while they entered into a dark lane where they saw a man whom 7 demons had bound with 7 strong cords. The demons were carrying him back to the door that Christian and Hopeful had seen with the shepherds on the side of the hill. Now good Christian and Hopeful began to tremble as the devils led the man away. Christian looked to see if he knew the man who was bound, and he thought he recognized him as one Turnaway, who lived in the town of Apostasy. But he could not clearly see his face, for the bound man hung his head like a captured thief. Once they had passed, Hopeful looked after him and saw on his back a paper with the inscription, "Wanton Professor and Damnable Apostate." Then said Christian to his friend Hopeful, "Now I remember something I was told about a good man who once lived in these parts. The name of the man was Little Faith. He was a good man, and he lived in the town of Sincere. The story I was told was as follows. Upon a part of this highway near us, Little Faith encountered a road called Dead Man's Lane, which joins the highway from Broadway Gate. It is called Dead Man's Lane because of all the murders that are commonly done there. This man, Little Faith, who was going on his pilgrimage just as we are now, happened to sit down and fall asleep close by this dangerous lane. Now it just so happened that around the same time 3 sturdy rogues named Faintheart, Mistrust, and Guilt, 3 brothers, were coming down the lane from Broadway Gate. They saw Little Faith and came galloping up to him at full speed, just as Little Faith was awakening from his sleep and was preparing to continue his journey. Being taken thus by surprise, Little Faith was powerless to run, and, being outnumbered, was powerless to fight. The rogues demanded, with threatening language, that he stand up and hand over his wallet and money. White as a cloud with fear, Little Faith stood up, but was slow to hand over his money, reluctant to part with it. So Mistrust ran up to him, thrust his hand into his pocket, and pulled out a bag of silver. Then Little Faith cried out, "Thieves! Thieves!" But guilt struck Little Faith on the head with a club, knocking him flat to the ground, where he lay bleeding profusely. Heedless of the wounded man, the thieves just stood by, counting the stolen silver. But finally they heard someone approaching on the road, and fearing it might be Great Grace, who dwells in the city of good confidence, they ran off and left Little Faith to tend to himself. After a while, Little Faith came to, and gathering what strength he had, got up and tended his wound as best he could, and hobbled on his way. This was the story I was told. "Did the three thieves steal everything he had?" Hopeful asked. Christian reported, "No, they did not find his jewels that he had hidden. But as I said, the good man suffered for his loss, since the thieves stole most of his spending money, and even though they did not find his jewels, he was still left with barely enough money to finish his journey. Unless I am misinformed, he was forced to beg for enough food to sustain himself as he went on the rest of his pilgrimage. He did not sell his jewels, so he was left to beg and do what he could as he went on his way. I am told that he was hungry and malnourished for most of the rest of his journey." Isn't it amazing that the thieves did not steal his certificate by which he was to receive his admittance at the celestial gate? Hopeful wondered. Christian commented, "It is a wonder that they missed it, although it was not through any cunning on the part of Little Faith. He was caught off guard by them, and had neither the power nor the skill to hide anything from them. It was more by God's gracious providence than by Little Faith's own endeavors that they missed his certificate." Hopeful added, "But it must have been a comfort to him that they did not get this particular jewel, this certificate, from him. It might have been great comfort to him if he had used it as he should, but those who told me the story said that he made little use of this treasure for all the rest of the journey. I was told that because of the trauma he experienced at the hands of the thieves, he almost seemed to forget that he possessed this certificate. On a few occasions when he remembered it, and might have been relieved by the thought of still having it, the memory of his loss would rush upon him and swallow up all hope and reason." "Alas, poor man!" Hopeful exclaimed. "This must have been a great grief to him." Christian echoed, "Yes, grief indeed. What if we had been robbed and wounded while traveling in a strange place? It is a wonder he did not die with grief, poor heart. I was told that he spent almost all the rest of the way bitterly complaining, telling everyone he met on the way about every detail of how he was robbed, wounded, and left for dead." Hopeful continued, "But what surprises me is that his desperate situation, he did not sell or pawn some of his hidden jewels, which may have given him some relief on his journey." "What, do you really mean this?" Christian challenged. "Then you don't see the full picture, like a newborn bird with its shell still on its head. For what should he pawn them? For what should he pawn them? Or to whom should he sell them? In the country where he was robbed, his jewels were not considered valuable, nor did he seek the kind of relief that anyone of that country could give. Besides, had his jewels been missing at the gate of the celestial city, he would have been excluded from his inheritance, a fact of which he was well aware. Had he parted with his jewels, he would have been in worse shape than if he had been attacked by 10,000 thieves." "Why are you so harsh, my brother?" Hopeful protested. "Esau sold his birthright for a mess of pottage, and that birthright was his greatest jewel. And if Esau could sell his jewel, then why couldn't Little Faith do the same?" Christian asserted, "Esau did sell his birthright indeed, and so do many others, and by so doing exclude themselves from the chief blessing. But you must understand the difference between Esau and Little Faith, and also the difference between their estates. Esau's birthright was the shadow, but Little Faith's jewels were the substance. Esau's belly was his God, but Little Faith's belly was not. Esau's interests were in his fleshly appetite, but Little Faith's were not. Esau could see no further than the filling of his lusts. 'Behold, I am at the point to die,' he said, 'and what profit shall this birthright do me?' But Little Faith, though it was his lot to have only a small portion of faith, was made to see and prize his jewels by faith, and not to sell them, as Esau did his birthright. You do not read anywhere that Esau had faith, not even a little. So it is not a surprise that a man who is ruled by his fleshly passions and appetites is willing to sell his birthright and his soul to the devil who resides in hell. He is like the donkey that stubbornly goes in the wrong direction. When such persons' minds are set upon their lusts, they will have them whatever the cost. But little faith was of another temperament. His mind was fixed on things divine. His interests were upon things that were spiritual and from above. What would be the purpose for someone of little faith's character to sell his spiritual treasure, had there been any who had bought them, in order to possess the empty things of the world? Will a man pay to fill his belly with hay? Or can you persuade the turtle dove to live upon carrion like the crow? Faithless ones can sell, pawn, or mortgage what they have, and themselves in the bargain, for carnal lusts. But those who have faith, saving faith, even though it is little, cannot do so. That is where you made your mistake, my brother. Hopeful stated, I acknowledge my mistake, but your abrupt response nearly made me angry. Christian explained, why, I simply compared you to some newly hatched birds of a brisker variety that will run without thinking to and fro in unfamiliar paths, with part of their remaining shell still upon their heads. But get over that and consider the matter under debate, and all shall be well between you and me. Hopeful went on, I am persuaded that these three fellows who attacked little faith are a company of cowards. Why else would they have run when they heard the noise of someone coming down the road? Why then did little faith lack courage? He might have stood his ground against them and yielded only after exhausting all other remedies. Christian suggested, many have said that the three thieves were cowards, but few in the time of trial have withstood them courageously. As far as more courage, little faith had none to spare. I understand that you recommend a brief brush with the rogues before yielding. This is your recommendation when they are far away from us, but I wonder if you would have not had second thoughts if they were to come rushing unexpectedly on you. Also consider that they are journeyman thieves, and that they serve under the king of the bottomless pit. If they called on him, he would come immediately to their aid, and he has a voice like a roaring lion. I have been in a situation similar to that of little faith, and I have found it a terrible thing. These three villains once attacked me, and like a courageous Christian, I resisted at first. Then they called to their master, who joined them in the attack. I would, as the saying goes, have given my life for a penny, but as God would have had it. I was clothed with proven armor that protected me, yet also made it difficult to stand up and fight like a man. No one can know the risks and hazards of a battle unless he has been in the battle himself. Yes, Hopeful somewhat agreed. But they still seemed to me to be cowards, for they ran away when they thought great grace was on the way. True, they have often fled, both they and their master, when great grace has appeared, Christian acknowledged. That is not a surprise, for he is the king's champion. I think you must make a distinction between little faith and the king's champion. Not all the king's subjects are his champions, nor can they all do such feats of war as a champion. Do you think that a little child could handle Goliath as David did? Or does a wren possess the strength of an ox? Some are strong, some are weak. Some have great faith, some have little. This man was one of the weak, and therefore he was overcome by the thieves' evil designs. Hopeful said, I wish it had been great grace whom the thieves had met. If it had been, he might have even had his hands full with the three of them, Christian asserted. Even though great grace is excellent with his weapons, he does well only when he can keep them at the end of his sword point. But if faint heart or mistrust or guilt should get close to him and knock him down, what then? If you look upon great grace's face, you will see scars and cuts there that demonstrate what I have been saying. I have heard that he has despaired even of life when in combat. Didn't these same sturdy rogues and their companions make David groan, moan, and roar? Heman and Hezekiah, who were champions in their day, were severely tested when assaulted by these same rogues. Peter, who some say is the prince of the apostles, was so put to the test that by the time they were through with him, he was afraid of a servant girl. And remember, these villains' king is at their beck and call. He is never out of earshot, and whenever they begin to have a difficult time, he comes in to help them if he can. But as for footmen like you and me, let us never desire to meet with the enemy or presume ourselves able to do better when we hear about the struggle of others. When we hear of others who have been sorely tested, let's not be deluded by thoughts of our own manhood, for those who do so are often the ones who have the worst time of it when they are tested. Witness Peter, of whom I made mention before. He would swagger indeed, and his vain mind prompted him to say that he would stand up for his master when all others fled for fear. But who was it who fled in fear when these villains arrived on the scene? When we hear that such robberies are done on the king's highway, there are two things we should do. 1. To go out armed, being sure to take our shield with us. The devil has no fear of us at all if he finds us without our shield. Remember what we learned? Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. And 2. It is also a good idea to travel in a convoy and request that the Lord go with us himself. This made David rejoice when he was in the valley of the shadow of death, and Moses would rather have died where he stood than go one step without his God. Oh, my brother, if he will go along with us, then we need not fear even tens of thousands set themselves against us, but without him, the proud pilgrims fall among the slain. As for my part, I have been in the battle before, and I cannot boast of my own strength or courage. I stand before you alive because of the grace and goodness of my Lord. I would be very glad to never go through such another time of testing and danger. However, since the lion and the bear have not as yet devoured me, I hope God will also deliver us from the next uncircumcised Philistine. Then sang Christian, Poor little faith, have you been among the thieves? Were you robbed? Remember this, whosoever believes, and gets more faith, shall then a victor be, over 10,000, else scarce over 3. So Christian and Hopeful continued on their journey, with ignorance following behind them. They continued on until they came to a place where there was a fork in the road. As they looked down each path, both appeared to be as straight as the other. They did not know which way to go. This has been Chapter 12 of Pilgrim's Progress.